Closed captioning of this program is brought to you in part by BNN, Business News Network.
Well, back in March, we had an economist on that had a plan, a rescue plan for President Obama, and actually published a book under that title. Petra Beck is from Petra Beck International and an author as well. 7 Steps to a Win-Win Economy, Petra. And back then, you were talking about a couple of things. There were 7 steps that we went through, including reform of the lending system, or face a revolt, learn to cope with disruptive change. We've had both those things. But one key point of our discussion at that point is you didn't like TARP. And it's appropriate today that we're talking to you because TARP is an issue, the repayment of TARP. Why didn't you like TARP back then, and do you think the repayment is a good thing?
Well, the repayment is a good thing, but then the toxic assets still will have to come off the balance sheets at some point of time, and that is still not decided. So back then, I just didn't like the fact that a lot of it was undisclosed to the public, and so that was my concern about this.
Now, we have seen the government disclose something of an idea of what it's going to do with these assets, going to warehouse them in a special facility, if you will. Is that the right step for them to take? Are they on the right path?
Well, I think in order to solve this crisis, we have to look at the very foundation of our economy and the definitions that we use for our economic theories to work. And if you look at the basic assumptions of the economic theories that we are basing ourselves upon, you're looking at 1776 supply-side economics set up by Adam Smith, and you're looking at 1936 deficit spending set up by John Maynard Keynes. So that is definitely a very long time ago, and that's why I think we should ask ourselves the question, what can be done to change the applications of this theory, because we have seen, history has proven that you cannot really solve enormous crises with deficit spending, and in particular crisis like this. We are in a different age right now as well. We are not in the age of agriculture and industrialization right now. We are in the age of technology. So obviously we cannot apply the old measure of cost anymore either.
I want to play devil's advocate here, and I think what the U.S. Treasury Department would say right now is that they don't have time for economic theory. They've spent the last 6 months dealing with the crisis. They have averted an apocalypse, an apocalyptic breakdown of the financial system. Don't you think that's the first thing you have to do before you can think about theories?
I wrote this book in 2008, and I wrote a book in 2004 which was called The Truth About Shareholder Value, A Solution to Deflationary Depression. I agree with you that they had to save the banks, but we have to look at the disease and not at the symptoms, and the problem that we are facing is not the bank meltdown. That is not the cause of this crisis. The cause was the lack of regulation, and also another cause was, of course, that banks were not able to make sufficient money anymore because they were facing a deflationary scenario for a very, very long time. The banks were called the steel industry of the 90s in Europe when I was working in banking. So yes, they did the right thing, solving the crisis, but you have to go to the root of the problem, and the root of the problem is that existing economic theory does not look at property rights, and property rights are very important for our economy. If you look at communism, private property rights don't exist. That led to market failure. If you do not recognize property rights in general, and if you cannot enforce them, and that's what happened in our economic system, in particular in the Western industrialized world towards China, then you have an enormous loss of capital happening over an extended period of time. You also have to look at the cost, the measurement of cost in our accounting system that was invented hundreds of years ago. We have to question that too. We have to come to a solution, and that's my point. We cannot waste time and play around. I agree that they did the right thing to throw a lot of money at the banks, because banking failure means production failure. But at the same time, you have to find a long-term solution, and continuous spending is not going to help us get out of it. Neither does supply-side theories, meaning cutting jobs like crazy, because that is leading only to more, less consumer spending and more downwards trend.
Okay, but Petra, then let's try to arrive at a solution. You're suggesting that regulation is important. You're suggesting that property rights are important. You're also suggesting that the banks make more money. Now, that's not going to go down very well.
No. I'm not, I'm just saying, what I'm saying in my book, A Rescue Plan for President Obama, is that we need a sustainable solution for this problem. Because I'll give you an example. If you look at the car makers, and if you look at the situation that we are facing right now, we are definitely not facing a sustainable business here. And that's what stock markets want. That's what shareholders want. You cannot deprive shareholders from knowing the whole picture.
But what's the answer? What's the solution then, Petra? What's the solution in the car?
The answer is to put a price tag on property rights and to acknowledge the fact that there are property rights in our economy. And I've been working on that for over 20 years. I met Nobel Prize winners in my early 20s at the university who were working on property rights theory for a long time. And I put a price tag on it with total quality management. You have self-assessments out there. Quality awards were set up in the 1990s. You have the European Quality Award. And I give you the example of the car industry. Getting back to that practical example. Okay, did you have leadership? Did you have proper strategies? Was the environment ever considered to be a factor in distribution? What about consumer satisfaction? What about employment? How did they treat their employees? Of course, financial results are very important too. But if you only look at the cost and only that, you will not have a sustainable picture. And that's what's happening right now. What we are looking right now is an industry that has failed because we only looked at one aspect of it, one snapshot of a picture, which is the cost.
Petra, great to chat. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Petra Beck, international economist and author. Let's